Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm not actually talking about DBT at all. I'm talking about glue work and analytics, and that's kind of the work that you do that holds your team together, but maybe actually holds you back. So first, a little bit about me. I'm the head of analytics at Yerdle Recommerce. We partner with big brands and retailers to operate resale sites on their behalf so that they can take back products from customers. So you've had a jacket, you've loved it, it's been wonderful, but you're done. You send it back in, where you process it, put it back up for sale, and it goes off and has another lovely life. So it's very cool building circular models. It's also a lot of really interesting data challenges because it's not a 10,000 unit situation with that jacket. It's your jacket and it's got like a little pilling right here, and we have to track that all the way through our systems. And we actually also give you the opportunity to write a little note about it and send it along, and we send that to the next person. And so it's an interesting sort of uniqueness challenge. So lots of cool data challenges. I'm hyping this up because we're hiring. So if you're interested, give me a chat afterwards. We do use DBT, despite the fact that I'm not talking about it. But what I am going to talk about is glue work. And before I go into it, I want to give a shout out to Tanya Riley, who's an engineer at Squarespace. And she wrote the talk that this kind of came out of and coined the term glue work. And so she was talking specifically in relationship to engineering teams. And I've been spending a lot of time kind of thinking about where the edges are and how much of this really applies to how analytics works and how much of it is really different in analytics and should shape how we think about our teams and our careers. So first, what is glue work? As I mentioned, it's kind of the work that holds teams and projects together. And so it is things that are truly valuable. It's work that makes sure that projects are properly scoped potentially, or achievable, or it's projects that improve collaboration or improve efficiency, and you're truly adding value to the organization. But what makes it glue work is that it's not valued the way that it should be. And specifically by that, I mean, it's not going to get you a promotion. And so there's sort of different types of work that are relevant to you at different points in your career. Like, I'm a team lead. It is my job to make sure my team works well. All of that is in my purview. If I can make them more efficient, then that's great. That's totally getting me to the next level. When you're an individual contributor, that's potentially not true. On a lot of teams, the work is the work, and your deliverables are the work, and you're not as well rewarded for doing sort of that meta work of figuring out how things can be more efficient or more effective. And that disconnect between valuable and valued is really problematic for organizations and individuals. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But a lot of the kinds of work we'll talk about, you probably do, and some of it is valued, in which case it's not glue work, that's just your job. Go do a good job of it. This situation is what we're gonna try to kind of parse apart. And so what is glue work is totally context dependent. Like, I can't tell you whether you do glue work because I don't know how your organization works, but I can tell you the types of things that can be glue work. And the first group of things is non-technical work. And this is well aligned with kind of what is considered glue work in engineering. And so if you were hired to write code, to work on your DBT models, then the things that you do that are less technical might be glue work. You might not be as well rewarded when you take the time to interact with stakeholders and, you know, go proactively attend a bunch of meetings with the marketing team every week, just so that you know what they're doing, so that you can proactively add value. It might be things that are more related to your team's functioning, like interviewing and onboarding. As I mentioned, I'm hiring. That stuff takes forever. It takes so much time. It's my job because I'm a manager. If you're an individual contributor, you're not always rewarded for the time that you spend on things like that. on making sure that the people who joined your team are as effective as possible. It can be work like triaging inbound requests. So when you get a request, you have to figure out, has this work already been done? Does this exist somewhere? If not, what do we need from you in order to do a good job of it? Who's the best person to finish this task? How do I get it in the queue for them? Like all of that work before the work that's kind of invisible. Sometimes people don't realize how important doing a good job of that is, and you're potentially sort of, it's not helping you along your path. And so that non-technical work is really kind of exactly what the original glue work talked about. And it's really relevant in engineering because you tend to report to engineers all the way up. You've got technical managers. Everyone understands the technical part of your job and maybe doesn't value the other part. But analytics is different because in a lot of organizations, the very technical work can actually also be glue work. Your boss might not be a technical person, or maybe your boss's boss. Maybe you report into marketing or to the finance team or to some other team that doesn't really grasp everything that comes into it. And so in this situation, glue work can be the time that you take to design something for scale. So you could do something the easy way and get it out, or you could spend 30% more time and design a system that's replicable or well documented or is otherwise going to scale with you. It could be testing and monitoring and making sure that you are actually learning about issues before they are visible to end users. And I sort of loosely call this anything that's in the back end. So if your organization thinks that analytics is a dashboard or a PowerPoint or God forbid a spreadsheet, anything that happens before that is sometimes invisible in these situations. And so when you have those disconnects between what you know is important to get your job done and to do it the right way, and what your boss thinks your job is, or what your boss's boss thinks your job is, that can be a real limiter on your career progression. And so I very distinctly define kind of what valuable is as, will it get you a promotion? And I did that because it's the clearest proxy for value that an organization gives you. And also because of these two reasons why glue work matters at all. So the first one is an equity argument. So women over-index in glue work and women under-index in leadership positions. And that is not a coincidence. There's a really great Harvard Business Review study that demonstrated that women volunteer for non-promotable tasks more often. And so glue work is this definitionally these non-promotable tasks. So if you're spending your time doing things that aren't getting you closer to a promotion, you're not spending time on the things that will get you a promotion. And tackling glue work is a very tangible way to level the playing field and get us to a place where leadership is more representative of the organization as a whole. And so, you know, when I look around this room, when I look at any group of analysts, gender representation is pretty solid, it's pretty even. When I look at my peers who lead analytics within organizations, that is not true. And that's the biggest reason that I care about this. But there's another kind of meta argument that I find very interesting, which is that analytics itself is glue work in a lot of organizations. We don't have a revenue target. We aren't building the product, but what we're doing is improving processes and serving as multipliers for the organization. So making sure everyone knows where they should be working and making better decisions and prioritizing appropriately. And so by aligning the true work of analytics within the organization and making sure everyone understands the work that goes into being that multiplier, you get you have a better ability to communicate the value of the analytics team through the organization. And because of these two things, I think it's really important to tackle this in your own career. And so if you're a manager of a team, then you have sort of a different ability to impact this. And it's pretty straightforward. What you need to do is align the value that work provides to the organization with the value it provides to the person doing it, and make sure that you are actually valuing this work. And so to do that, you really need to go through and understand what your team actually spends their time on, and find out whether those things are in your job description or career ladder, or however you're measuring their success internally. If it's not, then you have to realign expectations. And if it's valuable, it needs to be in their job description. If you know that analysts having really strong cross-functional relationships helps them be more effective and helps your team be more effective, then there should be a line in their job description about it. If you don't think that's their job, and you have a data product manager whose job that is, then make sure everyone understands where these lines are, and realign that. There's always some work that's gonna be left. There's, planning team offsites. It's valuable, we all bond, it's great. It takes a surprising amount of time every quarter. That kind of blue work, you just have to assign it. Don't let people volunteer, because when they volunteer, it's not gonna be equitable. Someone should do it every quarter, you rotate it, or you do it, or whatever makes sense, so that there's not a single person or a single group who are volunteering more often than others. And then this last part, I think, is potentially the most important, though it is the least legible, and that's managing upward. So if you as a manager understand what your team does and you really value it, you need to make sure that your manager understands. And all the way, whoever has to approve promotions all the way up the chain, they all need to really understand the work of what your team does. I've had, in my own experience as a manager, really frustrating situations where the work that my team did was things that I really valued, and I had done a bad job communicating that upwards, and I couldn't get their promos through. And that's not where you want to be. And this last item also really helps realign that organizational-wide understanding of analytics. Like, what is the work? What is it that needs to get done? But this, as I mentioned, glue work is mostly important if you're not a manager, because it's what holds you back from your next role. And so if you're an individual contributor, you don't have as much control over what your job letter says and what you're being rewarded for, but you can still go a long way to align expectations. And so the first thing with that is just understanding with your manager, I do these things that are not in my job description. Do you value them? And if so, can we get them in here? If you don't value them, then there's a step of sort of trying to build the case for it, making sure that your manager understands why it's important, why it adds value, why it's not acceptable for you to have a bunch of replicatable spreadsheets running around when you could spend 20% longer and come up with a solution that scales. Spend that time to kind of build the case and try to convince them. And if that doesn't work, stop doing it. That it sounds really extreme to say it's fine, just let the systems be unscalable. But to some extent, you kind of have to protect yourself if you're genuinely trying to advance. And so do the work that's going to get you the promotion and get yourself into the position to make better choices for your team. Or if it's something that you're stepping up to do on behalf of the team, so you're the primary triager for your team, stop doing it and someone else will. Like, just force other people to volunteer, or force your manager to assign it. So this is sort of the last step. You really don't want to get there because it feels bad to not do the things are important. But if you're really trying to solve the situation, sometimes you have to go through the pain of letting it happen. So if you're interested in more, there's a whole blog post. It's got a lot more words than these slides did. But in general, I think it's a really great moment to step back, think about what you're doing, and make sure everyone understands exactly how valuable it is, because it's awesome. So that's it. Questions? Yes. That's a great question. So I think making sure that people first just literally understand the work that got done. Because I think in analytics, a lot of times that's the problem, sort of anything before the visualization tool, people don't even understand or don't realize it happened. So making sure that that communication is happening is really helpful. And then I've generally worked in organizations that are very values focused in promotions too. And I think there's a lot of, it's sort of a moment to draw the work back into the values conversation. So like, how did you live the value of collaboration? This person like put the work into migrating us to a tool with actual collaboration built in away from a spreadsheet. And so, you know, tying it back to sort of greater organizational goals is really helpful too. Oop. I went to a blank slide. Sorry about that. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you so much. That was amazing.